Next on the Bill Gephardt Show, COVID. We seem to be doing fairly well with the vaccination programs, and things are going well. Would you agree?
Hospitalizations are coming down. Our fatalities are coming down. All of the metrics that we're measuring look better than they've looked in over a year, and that's a really big deal.
Our podcast today brought to you by these fine sponsors of local journalism. Robert J. DeBry and Associates. When you're injured, your attorney matters. All Utah Plumbing, Heating, and Air, where John Holland and his team stand behind their white glove service with some of the best guarantees in the business. And by ES Solar, save with solar power today, the clean, safe energy of the future. Plus, special guest sponsor, Legacy RV Center. Let's welcome to the podcast, Governor Spencer Cox. How are you today?
I'm doing very well, Bill. It's great to be with you again.
Great to have you on. You know, a number of things I want to talk about. And as usual, I don't want to talk particular issues. I just want to find out, what's going on inside of your head. And the first thing, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but COVID. We seem to be doing fairly well with the vaccination programs, and things are going well. Would you agree?
I would agree. We're very excited, with where we are right now. We've given over 2.5 million doses of the vaccine now. We're very close to 2.5 million. Close to 60% of our adults in the state have received at least one dose. We've got the highest portion of kids aged 12 to 15 that have gotten a dose. And most importantly, our case numbers, especially the last 2 weeks, we've seen a significant decline in case numbers. Our best days since really May, and that's just incredible to see. And now hospitalizations are coming down. Mm-hmm. Our fatalities are coming down. All of the metrics that we're measuring look better than they've looked in over a year, and that's a really big deal.
There are the individual cases, and the journalism community, for example, today is mourning yesterday's loss of a 44-year-old photographer who died of COVID. He was not certain that the vaccine was a good thing to get, is my understanding. And I worry about the messages, the double messages that we're kind of sending to people. The legislature, without any particular science that I can detect, and you signed you can't have mandate masks in schools as the school begins. I always thought that the conservative way was let local people handle this, but now we have a law that you signed, the legislature passed, and you signed, that says schools cannot mandate masks this fall. Why would we do that? I don't think there's any science behind that, is there?
There's a couple of reasons for doing it, I think, and of course, individual legislators will have their own thoughts on that. But one, I want to say that can change at any time. So if we do have something that changes in the fall or next year, something if we have a variant that's different, that's impacting kids significantly, we still have the ability to issue emergency orders and to change that for 30 days. So we would do that.
But it's still a message, Bill, isn't it? Because of freedom, individual freedom or something, not health considerations, masks are not mandated. Would that be fair and accurate?
Certainly, it does send a message. And that message is that people need to take that responsibility for themselves. They're not saying you can't wear a mask, right? Anyone can wear a mask, and masks are encouraged for those that are needed. I think we have lost sight on the scientific side a little bit about this virus and what it looks like for different people. If this virus was like it is in elementary schools for everyone in this country, we never would have shut anything down or required masks at all.
You mean polio, that type of thing we're talking about?
Yeah. So that, again, very, very different, because this virus impacts older people much differently than it impacts younger people. We heard a lot of people say, well, this is no different than the flu. They were absolutely wrong. This is much deadlier than the flu, exponentially deadlier than the flu. But when you're talking about kids in elementary school, for example, it is a lot like the flu. In fact, maybe even less dangerous or deadly than the flu. And so there is science behind not overreacting. And look, I met with a principal last night who said talked to me, and she's absolutely right. And by the way, if you read the CDC's website and specifically elementary schools, while they still urge and want mask requirements, there are a whole bunch of exceptions in there for child development. And this is where we're missing out. When we had masks come off in many of our school districts this last week of school, the teachers told me, and this principal told me, how different it was when they're teaching kids to read, how important it is to have that face-to-face contact. And so if we had kids that were dying or being hospitalized at the rates that we're seeing in older people, we would absolutely continue to require those.
It's important for me to go to a restaurant and not have a mask on and be able to see the people I'm around, but I don't want to get dead. Your point is that it affects children less, and therefore it's better. If they have to get to the disease, it's better because at least they can see the teacher face to face and each other face to face. Is that the message I'm getting?
There's a couple messages. So we can't, there is science behind the face-to-face thing as well when it comes to child development. And so we shouldn't ignore that. The second thing is, again, we don't want kids to get this. We don't want that to happen, but we have many school districts where there is zero spread happening at all. We know that children, especially elementary age kids, don't spread it as easily as older kids and adults. And we just, the rates are coming down. And so there's this balance that has to happen. But if you're worried about your kid getting the virus, then your child can wear a mask. And
I know, I'm still getting a mixed message out of you. I'm getting a mixed message on vaccines and masks, and I just love to nail it down, and I'm not sure we're going to be able to, are we?
There is no easy answer with this. There never has been. And so you make different decisions based on what's happened out there. So one of the reasons we were so worried about schools wasn't that we were as worried about kids getting the virus. What we were worried about was kids giving the virus to their parents and grandparents and killing them. That's what was driving so much of the policy there. And so now that we have vaccines available, then the equation changes. So kids over the age of 12, so middle schoolers and high schoolers were at risk for spreading it much more often. They have vaccines available now, and so that's very different. We have not seen major outbreaks or major problems in our elementary.
If my kid in elementary school wears a mask, because of the mixed messaging, they might be hounded and teased. That's what I kind of mean. Message,
I certainly hope not. And
no, I hope not too. But if somebody said masks are important, that would be great. Or this whole thing is a big hoax. But there's kind of the mixed stuff, and it's been going on the whole time, and it's been making me crazy.
It's making everybody crazy. It's made our country crazy. The people were pro science and mad at the people that wouldn't wear a mask because science says you have to wear a mask. And now those same people, when the CDC is saying you're vaccinated, you don't have to wear a mask anymore, now they're angry at the CDC. They don't want to follow that science. So unfortunately, it's become so politicized. We're trying to do the best we can to balance appropriately those messages, and hopefully we get it right.
Yeah. Angela Dunn, do you know why she left and went over to the county? I mean, she was a superstar as far as I was concerned. The epidemiologist at the state health department left the state recently and is about to start a new job over at the county. Do you know why that happened?
Oh, I do. Yeah. And Angela will tell you why it happened. Angela's a dear friend, and we've worked so closely together. Yes. This is a major promotion for Angela. It's a huge pay increase, and running the largest county. It's
about the same, according to the records. It's about the same pay, and she's going from a state level to a county level. So, okay, I will ask her.
Yeah, no, do ask her. No, this is a major promotion for Angela. So being an epidemiologist versus running the largest the largest public health entity in the state, it's huge for her and very exciting for her. And I told her I was so sad when she made that choice, but we all knew that offer would be coming, and it was the right choice for her.
Let me talk about critical race theory, another thing that's been just signed into law by you, where, let's see, what are we not allowed to teach in Utah schools now with regard to race, and what are we allowed to teach?
Nothing was signed into law by me.
Okay. I see.
There was no law passed on critical race theory. There was a resolution from the House and Senate separately urging the state Board of Education, who was already working on this issue. So no, there's no new law around critical race theory.
What do you tell your wife? Because I know what I tell my wife when I go home about the Republican Party. Here you are, a guy who likes to call yourself a moderate, and they have a convention at the Maverick Center, and you and Mitt Romney get booed. How did that affect you?
Well. First of all, those were two very different events.
Yeah.
I had maybe 5 people heckling me, and
Oh.
the good senator had a significantly more than that. But what I would say is that people express their strong opinions. I obviously disagree with that type of behavior.
I understand.
I think it's a terrible reflection on the people that did it, and a terrible reflection on our party. I do like to point out, though, that the effort to censure Senator Romney failed, and I think that surprised some people who thought that was kind of a sure thing, and that it was symbolic, and that it was going to happen. And I argue all the time that our party's big enough for Mike Lee and Mitt Romney, and I'm working hard to make it so.
53% of the people in your party nationwide, according to a poll, believe Trump is still the president and the election was stolen from him by Joe Biden. I'm looking for any evidence of that, and I have been for months, and I don't see it. What's your feeling? I mean, what do you tell your wife? What is wrong with these people? That's what I would say. You?
Well, I don't tell my wife anything, because she's involved in this. She was at the convention.
Yes.
And my wife tells me a lot of things, and she's right. And what she would tell me on this one is exactly what you said, and that is I've looked long and hard, and there is no evidence of that at all. And I'm very sad that so many people have bought into those lies and conspiracy theories that are out there, because it's just not true. And it just goes to show you again, and to what we were talking about earlier with the pandemic, that politics has become the overwhelming driving force in American life, and that's not healthy. It's surpassed religion, I believe, in most quarters, as the kind of driving force, and that's unhealthy for a party. It's unhealthy for a republic, and it's leading us in a very dark and divisive and toxic direction. What
are you going to do about that? You got the biggest bully pulpit in the state, not the nation necessarily at this point. We've talked about that before, but certainly in the state. What can you do about that to try to bring us together?
Well, I'm going to go on Bill Gephardt's podcast, and
as many as you can, yeah.
That we need to knock it off. I talked about it in my inauguration speech. I spent a significant amount of time on it during my State of the State speech. I've appeared. I don't watch cable news, but I've appeared on cable news to talk about how we need to stop doing this, so the people that are addicted to cable news will maybe hear someone who says things a little differently. I'm using that bully pulpit in any way I can. It's not as bad here in Utah as it is nationally. That 50% number isn't true here in Utah, but it's
okay.
High here in Utah. Yeah, we've seen some polling, not that exact question, but we've seen some polling that would probably put it closer to 30% of Republicans in the state of Utah, somewhere around there. I'd be interested if there was a poll that asked that exact question, but it's still far too many, and it's still concerning. By the way, we had polling done before Trump became president that believed that Russia had stolen the election for President Trump, and that Hillary was the rightful winner of that election before, in significant numbers, not as high as those numbers, but way more than I would have ever believed. And so this is very dangerous. If every 4 years we're going to do this, that we're going to call into question the legitimacy of our elections. That's the foundation of everything. And if that falls apart, I worry about where we're headed.
You were lieutenant governor, of course, before you were governor for a long, long time. How are you getting along with the legislature?
Look, we have disagreements, and I win on some of those. They win on some of those. That's just the nature of government, of the divided government that we have. But what I will say, and I think this is really important, is that my relationship and our administration's relationship with the legislature is better now than it has been at any point since I have been involved, and I don't think it's close. Not that we had a bad relationship with the legislature previously, but we have made a real concerted effort to improve that relationship. I've had more meetings with the legislature over the past 6 weeks than we would do in some years, and our communication. I'm reaching out to them, meeting with their caucuses, both the majority and the minority. We're in constant communication. I have a liaison. The lieutenant governor is working directly with the legislature as well. We have staff that is working with the legislature. I think they would tell you, if you ask them, that this is the best relationship they've had, at least since I've been involved in the past 9 years.
Census is out. Time for some more gerrymandering. Now, I'm just a dummy from out here, in the constituency, but I think this is a question of between representation and power, because Salt Lake is divided in two. And if I wanted representation, for example, for that area, I would probably want the congressional district to be all of the Salt Lake area. You get down to Provo, it's sort of the same thing, where these communities are divided in two. What is your feeling on that? Because we're having hearings now, and then I think in September or something, we have to vote and you have to decide on legislative districts.
The Constitution of the state of Utah says that the legislature gets to make that decision. Now, what we do have is for the first time, we do have a nonpartisan group that will be making recommendations to the legislature, but ultimately the legislature has the final say in making that happen, and so that is ultimately up to them. The way this works, somebody has to get divided. Somebody always has to get divided. Sanpete was divided in 3, and we didn't. That was fair, and we argued against that, and it just happens. So if you're the legislature, you get to make those decisions. And what I hope they would do is strive to keep as many communities together as possible, and to try to take the politics out of it as much as possible. But ultimately, they get to make those decisions. And the truth is, though, I mean, Democrats argue that hey, we should have a congressional seat. I hear that all the time. There are only about 150,000 Democrats in the state. There are 700,000 Republicans in the state.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
You would actually have to gerrymander a district to make it so you had one for Democrats when we only have 4 congressional districts. So the truth is, nobody's going to be happy, but like most states, whoever is in charge will probably be happier than those that are not.
No, it's a question of power more than representation. At least that's the way I've seen it. It's not as bad as Ohio, which has string beans running all over the state. Real quickly, police reform. Do you have a thought on that?
My thought in it is that we have the best police departments and police officers. I mean, I get to.
Not what the protesters say. They're looking at police reform.
Yeah, the highway patrol, Utah does it better than just about anywhere else. That being said, we have had major police reform. Working collaboratively. I signed 12 bills this past session, more than any other time in our state's history, and almost as many as our state history combined, for more and better training, more data, so many different things to help our police officers and our communities work more closely together. I mean, it was incredible to have these bill signings with chiefs of police, the NAACP, community activists who worked together on these, and I thought it was beautiful, and is making a huge difference. And so once again, I think Utah is leading out in this area. I think it's going to help our police officers. I think it's going to engender a greater trust in our communities, and certainly help us be safer in the long run.
All right, Governor Spencer Cox, thanks for joining us. You're great.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to see you as always.
For the latest in breaking local news, go to GephartDaily.com.